Owen Jones said that it's not the Muslims in the UK that are the divisive ones, it's the people who are concerned with Muslim immigration that are the divisive ones. But he gets brilliantly exposed. So we're going to watch this debate. And at the end, I want to show you why people like Owen Jones are actually so much more dangerous to the safety and prosperity of Britain than you could imagine. Let's watch.
It's an important part of it.
Well,
It's
okay.
an important part of it because one of the reasons people have voted for the Greens, not just Muslims, because there's this idea it's religious sectarianism to oppose a genocide. It's a consensus of genocide scholars it is a genocide. I'm not Muslim. I don't believe in God. I'm affronted by murdering people in other
Yes, but
countries
Owen,
using our weapons.
how do the
That's what other
Greens
voters believe as
reconcile
well.
this?
He obviously knows that the sectarianism is the fact that what's happening in foreign countries is playing a central role in British politics. And he's intentionally missing that part.
Argument where they are pro the Muslim vote, they're anti-Israeli if you like, but they're also trying to be progressive. There they have a Jewish gay leader, and yet they're trying to appeal to the socially conservative Muslim vote. That won't replicate, will it, successfully around the country in other constituencies? It's a one-off.
Good question.
I think it's a really unfortunate way you've just spoken about British Muslims. They can't be. You've just kind of contradicted, if you don't mind me saying, kind of your own position there.
It's not my position. I'm posing a question to you and trying to start a debate.
I don't think it's fair to have questions which pit communities against each other. That's the point.
No, but I'm trying to ask, how on earth did the Greens marry up those two very different positions when you have people who are known to be socially conservative?
I'm going to answer. The Green Party, as you know, is led by a Jewish gay man. It has a deputy leader who is a Muslim. People who voted for the Green Party, led by a Jewish gay man, include Muslims and non-Muslims. Some of those people, of all backgrounds, may have socially conservative views. I met a white voter in her 60s who wasn't a fan of immigration. She voted for the Green Party. People have lots of different opinions. I mean, I prefer people to have progressive views on everything. That's not how voters work. You have to treat voters as they are. But if Muslims are so extreme and socially conservative, why on earth would they vote for a party led by a Jewish gay man? It contradicts the entire argument. And the hope for this country lies in the coalition the Green Party are building, because it shows that if you're gay and Jewish, because now Jake would love, I'm sure, to demonize the Green Party. He keeps trying to do it for being anti-Semitic. They're led by one of the only Jewish political leaders in the history of this country. They're bringing together a coalition of people from different religious backgrounds or none. And what Reform want to do is break our communities apart. They want to pit people against each other based on their backgrounds. We don't want that in this country, and they rejected that in Gorton and Denton by a big margin.
So it's the gays and the Muslims coming together that's the future of Britain, and the conservatives, the far right, they're the ones that we really need to be scared of. Now, one of the, as ridiculous as that sounds, one of the reasons why that is one of the most dangerous myths floating around and why people like Owen Jones are so dangerous to the safety of the country is because they are catalysts for their own enslavement. I want to tell you about someone called Nargis Nazri, okay? She is a Christian woman living in Iran, and she was imprisoned for the crime of being a Christian in her home. She was sentenced to over 40 years in prison, along with two other men in 2024 in Iran, and her crime, having Bibles, crosses, musical instruments in her home, and being involved in a house church. So not even spreading Christianity across the land, just being a Christian in her home. She was imprisoned for doing something that people like you and me are free to do every single day. Which is why it's so stunning that the deputy leader of the Green Party, Mothin Ali, that Owen Jones is defending, was caught weeping at a protest about the death of the Ayatollah of Iran, the person who led the brutal Islamic regime that imprisoned people like Nargis. He was crying at that protest. What does that show you about where his allegiance is? And now Zach Polanski, another gay socialist like Owen Jones, unsurprisingly came out to defend him, talking about how anybody who challenges, anybody who criticizes Mothin Ali for being at the protest is Islamophobic. And Mothin Ali himself claimed that he was there not because he supports the Islamic Republic of Iran, but because he opposes war, full stop. Okay, how convenient that you take a position that seems to align with what you'd expect of a socially conservative Muslim, but it's not for religious beliefs. And I guess that's exactly the same reason why he's the only the only member of the Green Party that did not sign a pledge supporting the rights of LGBTQ people. He's so progressive and so tolerant and everything else that he didn't sign the pledge. And his reason was that he doesn't sign pledges from special interest groups because doing so undermines the party's internal democratic processes. Nothing to do with his Muslim beliefs, nothing to do with them whatsoever, nothing to do with that. And in fact, when he celebrated the October 7th attacks, saying that indigenous people, shortly after October 7th, indigenous people have the right to fight back and called for an end to white supremacist European settler colonialism. He then came out afterwards and said, oh, no, he wasn't celebrating October the 7th. It just happened to be around the same time. It wasn't that at all. He seems to always conveniently have a reason for why his allegiances are clearly first and foremost with perspectives that align with socially conservative Islam against perspectives that support Britain's Christian tradition and certainly some of the progressive values that people like Owen Jones would be celebrating. And this is why people like him are so dangerous, because they're constantly excusing people that hold views that are threatening to the British people, threatening to Christian people, even threatening to people like Owen Jones. Now, as a Christian, do I believe that being gay is good and is righteous? Of course not. But do I believe that people should be subjugated if they are? No, I don't. That's very different, though, to what Islam and Muslim run countries would want. And yet, there Owen Jones is siding with him. Why? Because of their mutual hatred for the billionaires. Now, whatever you think about the billionaires and whether we should tax the rich more, one thing is for certain is that billionaires aren't supporting, at least billionaires in this country, aren't supporting going into people's homes and arresting them because they're Christians. And yet, that is what happens in many of these Muslim countries that Muhsin Ali seems to be at least sympathetic towards. Now, I don't know exactly what he believes, but one thing I do know is that the number of Muslims in the UK that have explicitly anti-British and anti-Christian sentiment and desires is constantly growing. Over 50% of mosques in the UK are connected to what's called the Deobandi movement. And you can read about this in Ed Hussein's book, Among the Mosques, where Muslim talks to you about the kind of Islam that is growing. One of the things about the Deobandi movement is that they want Sharia law to be the law of the land. Sharia law being law governed by the Quran. That means, not only does that mean people like Owen Jones would literally not be alive unless they completely abandon his way of life, like immediately, like done. It also means that people who do not submit to Islam would have to pay the jizya tax, for example, which is a tax of protection for Jews and Christians, only Jews and Christians, to live in a Muslim land if they don't follow Islam. It would mean everything from husbands being allowed to physically strike their wives in discipline. It would mean so many other things. It would mean the continual stripping away of our freedoms. People like Owen Jones are literally rolling the red carpet for people like them. We cannot allow them to win. We cannot allow them to slowly creep in through the back door and take advantage of these useful idiots and then subjugate us. We need to continue to speak about what's happening and defend Christian Britain.